All right, welcome to another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series, a special episode on the Super Bowl preview with Kansas City Chiefs podcaster Chrissy Dittmann from KingdomsQueens Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I love talking about football. Any day I can talk about football is a good day,
Yeah.
especially when you get to talk about one of the, obviously all-time great teams and the Super Bowl. Really, when you get down to it, the Chiefs, it's I'm not sure if you're ready to say dynasty yet, but they're really, they're in the conversation every single year. And before we get started, I have to, just let you know kind of that I did at the beginning of the year in the preseason. I did pick the Chiefs to be last in the division, so I just want to get that out there right away. So
You're not the only one, so it's okay.
well, yeah, and so I live here in Wisconsin, and so with the when you look at great quarterbacks, between Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, the reason I picked them last was obviously because of the losing Tyreek Hill, losing the receivers, and when you look at the two quarterbacks, everyone here in Wisconsin was saying, okay, well, Aaron Rodgers is that great that he can make any receiver, work and really succeed. Well, we proved this year that for whatever reason, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is past his prime or whatever, but he can't do that. We did prove, on the other hand, that Patrick Mahomes can, and he's in that conversation as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. What he did this year, when he started. So let's just kind of go ahead and get into that first. From your perspective, from the beginning of the season to now, talk about that, like the Chiefs' path to the Super Bowl, and then what you were expecting from a fan base from the very beginning.
So my prediction, and I think that my fellow co-hosts Lexi and Jody, our predictions were all very close. We still predicted our team to go like 14-3 or 13-4. We were very confident in our quarterback, in Travis Kelce, in our O-line. We were very confident in what we had. Now, I'd be saying I was lying if the day that the Tyreek trade Hill all happened, it seemed like it came out of nowhere. But in hindsight, being 2020, it really didn't. There were lots of little like cookie crumbs that had kind of been sprinkled, and we weren't picking up on them because we just assumed we would have Tyreek back. Well, the day it happened, it like all happened within an hour. I was listening to 610 Sports Radio, and I was like, wait, what? We may trade Tyreek. And then an hour later, it was done. And I was really, really upset that first day. But I am a very positive person. Some people might even call me like positive almost over like in an annoying way, because I'm always trying to see like the silver lining. And so to me, when I looked at how our team was going to potentially get back to where we are now this year, I actually thought that losing Tyreek was a blessing in disguise, because we got some great draft picks. We cleared up a ton of cap space. And it also allowed our Chiefs offense to become a little less one-dimensional, because last year our offense actually went through some struggle periods where teams were figuring out, oh, if we just play two high safeties, then they're not going to be able to get those big explosive bombs down the field. And so this year I thought, you know what, this way maybe they'll take off the two high safeties a little bit. We can spread the ball around the field. And I think a lot of Chiefs fans really started feeling that way. And that's exactly what we did this season, which led our offense to still be number one in the NFL, which is just amazing considering all the changes and personnel we went through in the offseason. I mean, our whole offense is different. So
Yeah, absolutely. And talk a little bit about that then. Like, obviously, there's always some key offseason moves that kind of lead to any type of Super Bowl run. And sometimes they're little, sometimes they're big. And obviously, the Tyreek Hill, that was a good one that obviously propelled you. But what are some other moves that you saw the Chiefs make that really kind of led them to this point?
So one of the really, really cool things about this season is it's been kind of like a minor retooling season. Like I said, our whole defense is basically, we've got a lot of brand new parts in our defense, a lot of brand new parts in our offense. And if you look at the draft picks that we had, I mean, we've had first rounder McDuffie, who is a starter. We had first rounder George Karlaftis, who is a starter. We had Brian Cook in the second round, who he's been getting a lot of snaps and such. Sky Moore was in the second round, and he's like our fourth, fifth wide receiver. He had a huge punt return in the AFC Championship game. We had Joshua Williams in the fourth round, he's a starter, second stringer. He's been in a lot with injuries. Then we had our seventh rounders, Jalen Watson and Isaiah Pacheco, who are both starters. So Veach, our general manager, really nailed the draft this year, which has allowed us to start rebuilding our team young, which is huge when you're paying a franchise quarterback, $500 million. So that's been huge. And then also bringing in MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster, Carlos Dunlap, all these veteran players who've really helped complete our team in a really cool way. And they just bought into the environment that the Chiefs locker room has and the Chiefs franchise has. It's just been, there's been something that my co-host and I have been talking about this whole season. This team feels so special. And I felt that way about our 2019 team when we won the Super Bowl. And there's just something about this team that feels so incredibly special. It's like they're all having fun together. They're buddies on and off the field. They're always doing stuff together, and they bring that chemistry from off the field and they put it on the field, and you can just see it and you can feel it. And another big move we made was restructuring Frank Clark. I think to cut him versus restructuring him, we're only paying him like $1 million more than what our dead cap would have been. And he has been vital in George Karlaftis's skills improving throughout the season. They've created this incredibly special relationship. Frank Clark stayed late after practice every single day with George Karlaftis. He's been a huge mentor. And you can really see, especially the second half of the season, George Karlaftis has become a sack machine. I think he had 5.5 sacks in our last 6 games in the regular season. So just having those veterans and having them help all of these young players has been vital. And it's been great to see.
Absolutely. And it starts from the top. Obviously,
Yep.
The quarterback is the most important position in football. I mean, you have all those other pieces, but it comes down to the quarterback. And
Right.
I talked to a friend of mine, a former coworker who actually is in Kansas City, and he said that I should have talked to him before I made my predictions, because his quote was, we were going to see a scorched earth Mahomes. Like, he was just
Yep.
going to, and so talk about, like, I mean, really his greatness. I mean, what is about, like, him, not only on the field, but even off the field, like everything that kind of becomes just that package. I mean, one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen.
Yeah. So that's the thing about Patrick Mahomes is he is as amazing as he is on the field. He's just as amazing off the field. The amount of work he does for the city of Kansas City, he is so invested in the city of Kansas City, and his wife Brittany is too. They've invested in. I'm a big soccer fan. Like, I coached 3 soccer teams. I played soccer my whole life. Big Sporting KC fan, KC Current, and they have invested in the Royals, in Sporting KC, and the Current. And they're really just in getting so in touch with the Kansas City community through all of their work off the field. And then you have him on the field, and the first 5 years of his career have been the best start to the first 5 years of any quarterback in NFL history. He ranks, with all quarterbacks who have at least 12 starts in the playoffs, he ranks first in every single category. So just it's amazing what he can do. And what's crazy about it is he's actually changing the game. I know a lot of people relate him to like Steph Curry, who has completely changed the game with his style of play. And Mahomes is doing the same thing. He just does things that you just don't see very often. And you could look over a quarterback's entire career and look at all of like their highlight reels. Mahomes gives you a highlight reel per season that could be an entire quarterback's career. He just does things that are so crazy. And I've been a Chiefs fan for a really long time, since the 90s. And so I went through quite a few quarterbacks in my learning to love our Chiefs that were maybe not so great. We even had a year where we didn't even have a wide receiver touchdown. And I remember we finally got one, and then they called it back on a flag. And I was just like, oh, that was it. And they took it away. We suck. Why would they do it? Just give it to us, please. But No, like, so I try so hard not to take what we are witnessing for granted, because it is just so incredibly special what he does, and he's elevating all of his wide receivers. You look at this AFC Championship game we just played, and we lost Juju, we lost Michael Hardman, we lost Tony, we lost so we lost all our wide receivers plus some defensive players. And so Mahomes was left with MVS, who's a great receiver. And then he was left with Sky Moore, who's, he's had some snaps throughout the season. He's not one to get, the big game snaps normally. And then we had Marcus Kemp, who was just called up from the practice squad the night before. So, and he still was making things happen with those people. So he just, your friend saying Scorched Earth Mahomes, like, there's Petty Pat, there's Scorched Earth, there's Over My Dead Body. We've got all of these things that we use to describe him, because he literally leaves his all on the field, and it's phenomenal to witness every year. Every game, he's just such a leader. He inspires the team around him, and that's another reason why this team is so special, because they buy in to everything he does on and off the field.
And MVS had problems with drops early in the season, didn't he?
He did, yeah. So he's had some great catches, but the playoffs this year, he has stepped up a notch. He is making catches that I'm not sure he was making at the beginning of the season. So his chemistry with Mahomes has really clicked, and he's made some big time plays. He had a really gutsy reach for a first down in this last game. That was really gutsy, but he was fighting with his all to get that, because he knew we were counting on him.
Mm-hmm.
So just, he's just really coming into his own, and watching his video after our win, and you just see him like just in disbelief and awe that after all the years of hard work, same with Carlos Dunlap and Juju Smith-Schuster, they've had so many years in this league where they've worked and worked and worked, and they've never made it to this point. And seeing their gratefulness, they were in awe that they finally were going to get to go to a Super Bowl. And it's just so cool to see these guys finally get to experience that dream of theirs.
Well, yeah, I mean, you talk about MVS, and I am a Bears fan. I don't know if I had told you that. And so I had a chance in some NFC North groups throughout that AFC Championship game to really kind of troll some of the Packer fans, because and say, well, look what MVS can do with a good quarterback.
One of my greatest friends is a Packers fan, so he keeps asking me throughout the season. He's like, "Can we have MVS back, please?" I was like, "No, we're good, thanks, though."
But when you talk about quarterbacks, and I always make this comparison, you talk about Aaron Rodgers, and he is an amazing quarterback regular season, but I mean, take him against Mahomes. I mean, we talk about like a quarterback that dwells on drops and just then won't go back to a receiver because of that. That's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
But that's not Mahomes. He is just, I mean, it seems like he is that leader, but I mean, he does it through action. He does it through everything. And that's, I'm sure it really is, as a Chiefs fan, hard to not take this for granted, just how good he is, how great he is. And when you're in the middle of it, I mean, obviously it's the winning helps, I'm sure.
Yeah, it surely does. And I don't know, just, I would tell you that if anyone were to make a mistake on the offense, the first person that's going to go up to them is Patrick Mahomes and say, "Hey, shake it off. Next play. We got this." You can see it in all the mic'd ups. You can see it everywhere. He's going to be the first one to go up and try to tell his teammate, "Hey, shake it off." And he will almost, I would say, more than 90% of the time go right back to that person the next play. So he just truly believes in his guys. And from what everybody says, all his teammates, is that he is just a phenomenal leader. Someone they'd go to battle for every day.
Well, speaking of a player that he goes to quite regularly, Travis Kelce. I mean, we're really, witnessing one of the greatest tight ends there, and obviously Kansas City. That's saying a lot. I mean, you had Tony G, right, and so, and you also had my Iowa guy Tony Moayaki, but obviously,
yes,
Travis Kelce, he is really a league of his own. Talk about his importance to this offense and the Chiefs' success as well.
Yeah, so I had actually bought a Tony Moayaki jersey, by the way, nice. And obviously that did not go so well for me. So I gave it to my dog. But anyway, so watching the evolution of Travis Kelce has been just a treat, because when he first came to the Chiefs, he was very immature, and he was getting penalties because his temper was flaring, and obviously he was a fantastic tight end, but Andy Reid really harped on him to kind of get it under control. And once he did, he had great stats with Alex Smith. Don't get me wrong. He was fantastic. But if you look at his stats after Patrick Mahomes came around, they elevated. And Travis Kelce, I remember he was buddy with Alex Smith. Like, he was very protective of Alex Smith. And when the Chiefs announced that we would be moving to Patrick Mahomes, I remember an interview where they were talking to him, and he was like, Alex Smith is my guy. So it's going to take me a while to figure out this Patrick guy. And just knowing how that relationship started and knowing how in sync they are at all times. I mean, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, they read each other in ways nobody else can see it. Like, you see the great duos, like you have, Brady and Gronk obviously were a fantastic duo, but Mahomes and Kelce are coming up right behind him. And Kelce he's like a giant wide receiver. Everything he does, he doesn't necessarily play it like a tight end. He can do the tight end things. He can block. He can make those big contested catches. But he's running these routes, and he always finds a way to get open. He can be double teamed. He can be triple teamed. But he always finds a way to get open. And he's also changing the game for tight ends. And what's so cool about Travis Kelce is he is giving back to all these young tight ends coming into the NFL with his tight end academy that he does with George Kittle. So he's trying to help these new guys come into the league in honing their skills. And I think it shows a lot with we've got Blake Bell, we've got Noah Gray, we've got Jody Fortson, and seeing the leaps that they take every year because of having a tight end like Travis Kelce in their locker room and behind their back. I mean, he's doing such great things to where, like, I know we went from Tony G and then we had him, but I feel like the legacy that Travis Kelce has created, no offense to Tony G, I loved Tony G when he was here, but I find it so much more incredible what Kelce has done, just because of the type of tight end he is. He's just phenomenal.
Well, and I loved, this is probably from the Super Bowl, that mic'd up, when he was talking about, the play, maybe it was with Tyreek Hill.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So it was, I know he was a quarterback at one point, but he's able to read these defenses so well. And in such an incredible moment, it was against the Bills. It was against the Bills in the AFC Championship. And he called exactly the play that needed to happen. He read the defense. He said, hey, he's going to do this. I'm going to be open, et cetera, et cetera. And he called all those plays to where we could get down the field in 13 seconds. Sorry, Bills fans. I know that's a touchy subject, but the way his knowledge of the game, and he'll be the first one to give credit to other people, but his knowledge of the game, I think, is so great when you've got knowledge like Patrick has and knowledge like he has. Having those two heads together in a huddle, just watch out. Like, it's almost unstoppable, the two of them together.
Well, speaking of watch out, obviously, at the beginning of last week, you heard the Burrowhead stuff. What did you kind of think when they said that? And then, obviously, you showed that, Kelce, Chiefs players were listening, right?
Yeah. So on Twitter, I try not to. I'm a very positive person on Twitter, and I remember I saw these comments, and I put a tweet out, and I was like, guys, stay humble. I said, humbleness speaks louder than words. And so I was really quiet on Twitter that week because there was just a lot of comments from players, from fans of Bengals fans, or of the Bengals organization, that I just thought, they'd won the last 3 matchups, so they deserved to do their talking. But, I was an athlete, and I always wanted to let my play on the field speak for me. And I feel like when you're going into a game as big as this one, I'm surprised they did as much talking as they did, because they had to have known it was going to amp up the Chiefs. And then when their mayor got involved, that was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was pretty cringeworthy.
So he's owned up to it, and that's fine and dandy. But our team is one, especially our defense, who gets disrespected on an annual basis. No one ever believes that our defense is going to do anything. And they're kind of like the redheaded stepchild to our offense. The offense gets all the shine, and the defense kind of gets forgotten about. But our defense, they take these comments incredibly seriously. And you can see by Frank Clark, Chris Jones, Colin Saunders after the game, Juan Thornhill, they let it all out after the game, deservingly so. Like, people keep sleeping on the Chiefs defense, and they shouldn't, because our defense is peaking right now, and they are not a defense you want to see.
Well, speaking of that, talk about that defense and defending Jalen Hurts. Obviously, we'll see if Hurts is 100%, but
Yeah.
he's a special talent as well.
Oh,
He's
definitely.
starting to emerge. Talk about defending Hurts and then even defending AJ Brown.
Yeah. So Jalen Hurts runs like an RPO play action like system incredibly well. He is a great rushing quarterback with the amount of rushing touchdowns he has. He's the type of quarterback with the skill set that you don't see come into the NFL very often. But with his running ability, our defense is going to have to make sure they bring like an extra person in to pack the box, which could potentially take away from having some double teams on AJ Brown or Devonta Smith. And so the thing is, though, I feel like our defense is normally fairly good at stopping the run, but they're going to have to try to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket so he doesn't kill them with his legs, because that's like a Lamar Jackson type thing. Or anytime we played some quarterbacks this year, this is kind of my big fear, is when we've played running quarterbacks this year, our defense kind of tends to struggle a little bit more with those. I have no concerns about our secondary. They played, and this is nothing against AJ Brown or Devonta Smith. Our secondary is locking down some of the top receivers in the NFL. You look at the Bengals game and how well McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Brian Cook, Juan Thornhill. You look at how well they played. Chase Higgins, or not Chase Higgins, sorry, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. You just look at how well they played them, and they're doing a really good job. And the Eagles are going to want to get a lot of those guys one-on-one, and our defense is actually one of the better defenses in the NFL in one-on-one coverage. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think our secondary has the tools to get it done. We just have to make sure our D line is continuously getting pressure on Jalen Hurts. That's the big key right there. Takes pressure off the secondary if our D line can get the job done.
Well, great minds think alike. I was just going to go to that. So when you look at the Bengals, and the Bengals, I mean, obviously it's not the same because of their issues on the offensive line.
Right.
Now, the Eagles' offensive line, they are pretty solid. They're one of the best in the NFL. I mean, so what player do you think? Obviously, Chris Jones is going to be a factor here. Talk about that defensive line that's going to need to get the pressure versus the Eagles' offensive line.
Yeah. So the defensive line, what's really neat about what they're doing right now is Spags is dialing up some really cool schemes to get Chris Jones open, or to have players double Chris Jones. It's almost like it's schemed in there, like, hey, these two guys are going to go towards him, and then it's going to leave this gap to where Frank Clark, George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Colin Saunders even can get through to get a hit on the quarterback. And so Chris Jones, if you notice in a game, they're moving him all over the line. He's not just playing internally, he's playing externally as well. So they're moving our guys all around to create different matchups. And I think that's going to be huge because, like you said, their O-line is one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. So our guys, what's really cool about this matchup is the Eagles defense and the Chiefs defense are 1 and 2 in sacks. Which, if you would have told me that at the beginning of the season, I would have been like, wait, we're second in sacks. What happened? So our guys are just doing a really, really good job of finding ways to scheme themselves into a good matchup to get a pressure on the quarterback. And we're really good at batted down balls too. Our guys are, if they can't get to the quarterback, we're batting down a lot of balls too. I think we might lead the NFL in batted down balls. So just getting pressure in those ways is going to be big for sure.
So you talk about scheming. Obviously, Andy Reid gets a lot of credit. Gets a lot of publicity. What about the who's the defensive coordinator there with the Chiefs?
Spagnuolo.
Okay.
Spags.
Yeah, and obviously he's had a heck of an NFL career. Probably best as a coordinator. So do you? I mean, see him kind of being obviously that key to kind of continuing to scheme some of those players.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the so Spags has been amazing at
Mm-hmm.
creating schemes to really work with our guys. And I'd say he blew us all out of the water with his scheming against the Bengals, because in our other matchups with the Bengals, no matter who their O-line was, we were not getting pressure. I couldn't figure it out. I don't know why. But in this game, we went out and it was automatic. Like, our defense set the tone of the game with our D line. And so another thing that was huge in the offseason that has to do with our defensive line is acquiring Joe Cullen. He has done wonderful things for our D line. He's been an amazing coach. And the guys have really bought into everything that he is doing to help scheme with Spags to get them in the right position. So those have been two huge things that with coaching. Spags and Cullen have done an amazing job with our D line.
Yeah, when you look at all the pieces, obviously, quarterbacks and offense, that they get all the publicity, right? Andy Reid, everyone gets the publicity. But, when you talk about the defense, and some of the unsung heroes, coaches that are really putting all the work to make this happen, it's not just one, it's a whole team. And when you look at this game, then obviously, you probably have your plans. Talk about your Super Bowl game day, because obviously you've the Chiefs have been in the Super Bowl before. Talk about just kind of how you're going to go about it and your preparations for this, win or lose.
So what's funny? So I watch every single game with my mom. All right, my mom and I are very serious Chiefs fans. We're not one, like, I can't eat during a Chiefs game. I'm 100% focused. I've got my superstitions that I have to have every single game. But since it's a Super Bowl, my family decides, we're gonna have a family get together, family gathering every Super Bowl. Well, I know when we won the Super Bowl, the 2019 Super Bowl against the 49ers, my older sister doesn't ever watch Chiefs games, right? And she decides, she's going to come over and they're going to watch a Chiefs game. Well, we were down, obviously. That was a comeback win. And I remember I was just sitting there stone-faced, staring at the TV. She's just having fun, doing her thing, talking, and I'm just ignoring her because I'm just like, she's the reason we're losing. She's here. She never watches the games. And so then, we go down and she's like, okay, well, we're going to leave. And I was like, okay, bye. Like, I don't even know. I don't know if I said bye. I was like, so like laser focused. Well, then she leaves and we come back in this glory. And I remember calling her and I was like, thank you so much for leaving. Like, I'm so laser focused. So she's been saying she's been watching some Chiefs games this year and she watched the entirety of the AFC Championship game. So I'm not as concerned about her coming this year, but I'm a very superstitious person. I have to find a position. And if I'm sitting in a position that works well, I have to stay in that position. And I had a knee replacement last year. So if it hurts my knee, I don't care. I'm going to sit in that position. I have to have this heater on high the entire time. I have to have a blanket on. And if I get hot and sweaty, it doesn't matter. Have to keep the heater on. I've learned my mistake that way. So, and I've been wearing this. I coach 3 soccer teams and I was rushing from soccer to one of the games at the end of the season. I can't remember if it was Seattle or if it was the Raiders. I feel like it was the Raiders, but I can't remember. And I was wearing my blue sweatshirt and I messaged my chat, my Chiefs Kingdom chat. And I was like, so do I have to wear this blue sweatshirt from now on? Because we had such a dominant game. They're like, yep, you have to wear it from now on. So now I've got my, do we have time to run wasp shirt that I wear underneath it? And then I've got my blue sweatshirt that is not Chiefs colors, but I've got my blue sweatshirt that I have to wear over it because I'm just incredibly superstitious. But my mom turned 70 on Wednesday. So we're going to be doing a little birthday celebration before the game. And then I need the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl for her because my dad died right before the 2019 Super Bowl.
Oh,
and
wow.
we won that game.
Mm-hmm.
And God, I wish he could have been there to see it. And so I really want this to be a special win for my mom. Like she needs that good little birthday boost. It's a big birthday. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so, kind of look at this game. I'm not sure if it's superstitious for you or not to actually predict a score. What do you kind of thinking the score might be?
So people might call me a homer for this, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have full confidence in my Chiefs because Mahomes is the best quarterback that the Eagles have faced all year.
Mm-hmm.
You look at who the Chiefs defense has faced. They've faced Joe Burrow twice. They've faced Allen. They've faced Herbert twice. Faced Trevor Lawrence twice. They've faced some really, really good quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And then you kind of look at who the Eagles have faced. They're a great team. They're a phenomenal team. So I don't want to take anything away from them. I just don't think they've been tested like the Chiefs team has been tested. So I'm predicting a 31-24 Chiefs win.
31-24 Chiefs win. I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
You know, I like that point you talked about the quarterbacks that they have faced. I'm glad you didn't, kind of, go in depth, but the Eagles did face my guy Justin Fields, and they didn't necessarily do the best against him. Obviously Justin Fields is young; he's got a lot of growth to do. But maybe that is when you talk about Mahomes and where he's at. He can definitely exploit that Eagles defense.
Yep, for sure. And the Eagles faced Dak Prescott on Christmas Eve and they lost to him too. So I'm not saying that it's a guaranteed win, obviously, just because they haven't faced a quarterback like Mahomes. But Mahomes is very good at exploiting defenses. And if you look at our offense and how many number one defenses we faced over the season, we faced a lot of defenses who were considered number one in the NFL, and then they face the Chiefs offense and they're no longer the number one defense after that. So we've done that a lot this season. So I have no doubt that our Chiefs offense will find ways to exploit the Eagles.
I agree. So talk a little bit about your podcast, obviously Kingdom's Queens, and how did that start? How long you've been doing it? And what do you like most about doing your podcast?
So originally we got contacted by, this media group who wanted to do a podcast, but after doing it for a while, we decided to go out on our own. So I've got myself, we've got Lexi, and we've got Jody, and we're all three diehard Chiefs fans. And it's something that's really cool about our podcast is you don't find very many all women Chiefs NFL or NFL podcasts in general. What's really cool is we all know our stuff. We're all very positive. We're fun. We bring a different outlook to our podcast than I feel like a lot of people bring to theirs. And I don't know if that's because we're women or if that's just who we are, but we have a great chemistry between the three of us. And what's crazy is when we started our podcast, none of us had even met each other. So we had just learned of each other on Twitter. We were kind of interacted on Twitter. But Twitter is what really brought us all together. And I would do anything for those ladies. They're just wonderful. We were talking all day long, every single day of the week, and doing the podcast with them has been it's one of the highlights of my week. I look forward to every single Tuesday. We go live at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. And it's just so much fun talking football with like-minded women who bring different outlooks to the podcast, and they're just great. So I recommend highly for everybody listening. Go check out Lexi Osborne. You can see their stuff at the bottom of the screen. Lexi Osborne and Jody Newsome and the Kingdom's Queens Twitter page. We'd love for you guys to follow along and interact with us every Tuesday. We have so much fun. And we've grown a lot this season. Our podcast has really taken off, and I love that our first year we get to go talk about our Chiefs going to the Super Bowl. So it's really cool.
Well, yeah, tell you what, like I've connected with a lot of different podcasters, and I had a smile to myself when you talked about obviously, it's an all-female Chiefs podcast because actually I did, in some of my interviews, I did connect with an all female Raiders podcast, and I might have to, go ahead and do a referee on that one. That might be interesting. Although the Raiders don't have much to talk about these days.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Raiders. So I've been, obviously I'm anti-Raider, but I'm also respectful to other fan bases, and watching what happened to Derek Carr, I could not believe I was feeling sympathy to Derek Carr. And then there was a Raiders fan who got kicked out of the stadium for saying we deserve better on a sign. And I was feeling sympathy for this fan base that I'm not supposed to feel sympathy for. So I do hope that they can find a way to fix everything going on, because it's chaos right now. They have no money to sign anybody or
Mm-mm.
replace Daniel. So it's it's going to be a chaotic off season, and I just don't know how soon it's going to get better with all the problems that they have right now.
Well, yeah, and you talk about the division. I mean, that's just when you talk about like teams, it's really a murderer's row. I mean,
Yeah.
now that you've got, I mean, Russell Wilson was supposed to be better, but I don't know. Are you worried at all with Sean Payton now, the Denver coach?
No, because Denver has no money and they have no draft picks. And
Mm-hmm.
my best friend is a Denver Broncos fan. That's actually how we became best friends. We had the friendly banter, between us two, and somehow we became best friends through it all. But Denver just gave away draft capital, a lot of draft capital, and they're paying Sean Payton a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how they're going to they're just not going to have money or draft picks, and that's the thing the Chiefs have done, is we have built our team through the draft, and we have 12 draft picks this year.
Mm.
So I don't know how they're going to keep up. And Herbert for the Chargers, he's a fantastic quarterback, but I feel like they're going to have to pay him soon too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a really good position because of how young we've built our team through the draft. So
Yeah, I mean, you look at the with the Chargers too. I mean, they've had issues on defense. I mean, they tried
yeah.
to fix that, throwing money at it. But Herbert's interesting. Everyone says he's a great quarterback, and he's got all the talent and tools, but it it matters to do it when it matters.
He can't
And
win the big game.
right,
Yeah.
and that's really tough when you're in the same division as Mahomes. And
Yeah.
I I will never doubt Mahomes again. Even if they lose this game, Mahomes is always going to be in conversation.
Yeah. And what's crazy about the AFC West is they spent over $500 million this offseason to keep up with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs had a
Hmm.
clean sweep of the NFC or the AFC West. So they're 6-0 in the AFC West, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean the Chiefs took a step back, it seemed, and still made it the playoffs, or
Yeah.
still made the Super Bowl. It's just it's crazy.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Well, I want to say, win or lose, obviously you're picking the Chiefs. But obviously, I'm as a Bears fan, I'm already looking toward the offseason, and I already have my hotel reserved for the draft in
Yeah.
April. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited just for it to be in Kansas City. I've been to Kansas City. There's a ton to do. Are you going to be there? Are you kind of excited as a Chiefs fan to have the draft? You know, obviously in your state, in your city.
I'm thrilled.
Hmm.
I love watching the NFL drafts. I don't know
Hmm.
why. They're so much fun for me to watch. And knowing how important drafts are to build your team young when you have a franchise quarterback, as I think I said earlier in the podcast, you have to be able to build your team through the draft. And Brett Veach, our past two drafts, has really nailed it. Like last year, we brought in Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, who are all starters, and Nick Bolton was the second highest leading tackler in the NFL this year. He also wears the dot for our defense, and he's only a second-year player. He is phenomenal. And then this year, all of our draft picks, you look at how many are starters. 10 of our 22 defensive players are rookies. So you look at how well the Chiefs are building through the draft, and the fact that we have 12 draft picks to play around with this draft, and we host the draft in Kansas City, it is a dream come true. So I'm hoping I can get to the draft. It's hard for me because I'm a single mom. I coach 3 soccer teams. I have practices 4 days a week for my soccer teams. But my goal is to try to get to the NFL draft with my co-hosts. One of my co-hosts lives in Texas, so we'll see if we can get her in here for that. But we will definitely be covering the NFL draft with our podcast as well. We're really, really looking forward to it. I hope whoever can make it to Kansas City for the draft, I hope they just enjoy the experience. We've got great barbecue. We've got great, it's a great city. There's lots to do. So I really hope everybody enjoys the experience. And Union Station
Hmm.
is a beautiful place to
Hmm.
host this draft. So it's going to be spectacular. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see kind of how it goes. And yeah, I'm actually taking my kids out of school for that. They're coming
Oh,
with
that's
me.
great.
They're pretty excited, especially my son. He is a big Bengals fan, though, but he is still excited nonetheless.
Sure.
Now, you talked about Brett Veach and the draft, and it made me think it's something I have to bring up that I don't want to bring up, but the Bears Chiefs connections, obviously a good thing. I really loving Ryan Poles and what he's doing for the Bears, but just to think that Matt Nagy may get a Super Bowl ring. Talk about him a little bit. I mean, it's so weird as a Bears fan to see him kind of talking about to one of the goats, in Mahomes, and just
Yeah.
Mahomes could just say, you don't know anything, get out of here. So talk about him and some of the other Bears Chiefs connections.
So with Matt Nagy, what's so cool is, so before he went to the Bears, obviously he worked with the Chiefs, and
Mm-hmm.
he had such a special connection with Patrick Mahomes. So the fact that he was able to come back, and he took a huge step down from being a head coach to being a quarterback coach. That's a step that most head coaches, when they lose their job, they don't necessarily go down to that level. But he had such a special connection with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid that it was worth it for him. And we don't know what's going to happen with Eric Bieniemy at the end of the year. We don't know if he might do like a sidestep move into another offensive coordinator position, or if he's going to stay here because he's on a 1-year deal. So his contract is up at the end of this season. And I think Andy and Clark Hunt have been doing 1-year deals in case he does get a head coaching job somewhere. But it doesn't seem like there's been as much head coaching interest in him this year. So we don't really know what's going to happen at the end of the year. So it's very possible that if Eric Bieniemy does get a job somewhere, then Matt Nagy could step in and be the offensive coordinator. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting topic of conversation in the off season for sure. But I'm glad. I feel bad that he did not have as much success when he was the Bears coach, but I'm so glad that he's back here. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that, I mean, some coaches are just not meant to be head coaches, right?
Yep. Into the Raiders.
Oh yeah, yeah. Start there,
Sorry.
yeah. But even on the Chiefs, I mean, you have Nagy, and maybe he will be a better offensive coordinator because he just wasn't able to juggle everything. With the Bears, and Spagnuolo was like that too. With the Giants, I believe, and
Yep.
so and I think kind of knowing your place as a coach. I mean, I'm sure that's hard. Everyone has egos, but Andy Reid, I mean, he just kind of like sets the table, and he's really one of the great guys too in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. His coaching tree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's another thing, is his coaching tree is all over the NFL. He's produced so many head coaches that you almost lose track. Like, you don't realize, like, oh, this guy used to work for Andy Reid. So did this guy. So does this guy. Like, he's just got connections all over the NFL, and they normally tend to have pretty darn good success. So unless they're going up against Andy Reid normally. So
Well, and he fired Nick Sirianni, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're going up against each other, and there's so many great storylines going into this Super Bowl. It's unbelievable. Like, all the great storylines. So I don't know, this whole thing, it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. And I definitely appreciate you coming on. Where can
Yeah.
everyone find you again?
So we are the Kingdoms Queens Podcast. So at Twitter, we're at Kingdoms Queens, and then we're on Facebook. We go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. You can see us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Apple and Spotify, basically anywhere you can get your podcasts. And we will be going through the off season. I don't know if it'll be every Tuesday. We haven't quite figured that out, but we'll be having shows during the off season and leading up to the draft and going into training camp. And we're hoping maybe we can get to training camp one day and do a live stream from there or something. So it's been fun. We can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks again. Once again, this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on the Kansas City Chiefs preparing for the Super Bowl. Thanks again, Chrissy.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.